We're at 1:32. I think we are going to get started. So a huge welcome to everybody this afternoon. It's a little bit gloomy outside, but certainly not gloomy here. We're going to have a really, really interesting discussion.
Just than we would have wanted to be, but the questions we're asking and the work we're doing is really is really great, and we're really proud of it. So
that was brilliant. Comedy moment. We are going to try and keep all of you on mute for the moment, just to avoid any commercial breaks like that. But we are delighted to have you all here. We've got a really good session lined up for you. We've got two great speakers, and we're going to really be looking at mentoring and coaching in a number of different ways. Firstly, we're going to define it. We're going to talk about the benefits of both mentoring and coaching. We're going to look at this subject through the lens of skills, the skills that you need for coaching and the skills you need to be a great mentor. And then we're going to wrap up with a how to get started. We're hoping that the talking at you bit is going to last approximately 30 minutes. And then we are going to turn over to question and answers. We want this to be a really interactive session. So please do post your questions in chat. And then there will be a moment, obviously, when we wrap up to invite you either to directly address your questions to the two panelists, or obviously I'm very happy to field those questions for you. But we're going to start with a quick poll. So which one do you feel you know more about? Coaching or mentoring? And really easy, there should be a little pop-up. Oh, fantastic. We're just going to see what the result is coming in. Coaching is just ahead. Okay. Ooh. I think that's almost even Stevens there. And obviously we've got some people in the audience who are probably going to really enjoy just having some definitions and understanding both. So thank you all for taking part in that poll. We will have a second poll later on. But at this point, I'm going to hand you over to Caroline and Ed to introduce themselves. Over to you both.
Thank you. Delighted to be here with you all today. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Caroline Sheridan. Many of you that do know me, though, will know that I'm founder and CEO of Sheridan Resolutions, a global coaching and leadership development consultancy. I'm also myself a trained coach and mediator. And at Sheridan, we believe that everyone has potential which is hidden to a greater or lesser extent. We like to think of that hidden potential as possible future brilliance. We aim to maximise potential in both people and organisations by realising that brilliance, and that's very much at the heart of what we do worldwide. I mean, globally, we're seeing a trend in organisations and individuals who are looking at how to best maximise potential within their people, whether that's via coaching, mentoring, or other development and employment engagement activities. And today we're going to talk about the first two of those, coaching and mentoring. And the synergy between us and PushFar is that in very broad terms, we, Sheridan, tend to operate more on the coaching side. We obviously do some mentoring, and PushFar on the mentoring side. By way of example, we just launched our latest ILM accredited coaching and mentoring program online, and we run in-house supervision for internal coach faculty. And we run also a number of programs on coaching high performance, coaching to engage and motivate, performance coaching masterclasses, as well as one-to-one, 360 group and team coaching. Then, of course, there's coaching as part of a range of development activities and one-off coach sessions, as well as the more traditional executive coaching programs. Certainly creating a coaching and mentoring culture for many is increasingly at the top of the agenda. So we're very pleased to be here today to talk to you about both and to be here alongside Ed of PushFar. PushFar and Sheridan are strategic partners, and it's a pleasure now that I hand over to you, Ed, to talk a little bit about what you do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Caroline. Really great to have the opportunity to connect with so many of you today, and great to be alongside, as Caroline said, Sheridan Resolutions, who are a fantastic strategic partner, and we have the privilege of working jointly with a few clients already, and I'm certainly learning a lot along the way about coaching as well, and I think this is going to be a really informative session, hopefully for everyone, but I think I will learn quite a lot about this as well, as I have been doing through the preparation. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of PushFar. What we do is we try and make mentoring more accessible and effective to everyone. And what that means is, first and foremost, through our platform that we've developed, helping mentors and mentees to really make the most of mentoring, be that through giving them a bit of structure, helping them to set their goals, keep track of progress, and understand really how they can make the most of it, whilst also helping organisations to run mentoring programs at scale as well. So when we look at mentoring, there's often quite a lot of manual process involved in trying to match up and manage mentoring and report on it. So our platform that we've developed really helps to streamline that whole process and make it as engaging as possible. I actually come at this from a personal experience. I set up PushFar when I was looking for a mentor myself a few years ago, and I certainly learned a lot along the way about mentoring, and I'm now both a proactive mentor and also mentored by a couple of people too. So really excited to share a bit about that, and help define all of that. So I think what we're going to start with is a definition on both mentoring and coaching, just to set the groundwork so we all know what that looks like. So I'll go first with mentoring. So what is mentoring? Just a single sentence there to summarize what mentoring is. A mentor is someone who shares their knowledge, skills, and or experience to help another to develop or grow and grow. And I think what's really interesting about mentoring is the fact that you'll notice in that definition, we didn't mention hierarchy, seniority, age. A lot of the time, particularly at the moment, we're seeing discussions going on about reverse mentoring. And actually one of our advisory board members last week, or week before last rather, used the term mutual mentoring. I think what's great about mentoring and coaching as well is actually the fact that it is mutually beneficial. There are benefits to being mentored, which are perhaps more obvious some of the time, but actually there are so many benefits to mentoring other people as well and sharing that knowledge and those experiences. As I mentioned, it was me looking for a mentor myself. I was a bit lost in my own career. I needed someone to sort of guide me on what my next step should be in my journey, which led me to finding a mentor to help share their experience of the industry and what my next career move should be. That led me to setting up PushFar. One of the great quotes here is one of the greatest values of mentors is the ability to see ahead what others cannot see, and to help them to navigate a course to their destination. And it really is all about that guidance and that advice, often experience-based as well. So Caroline, sort of summarise very briefly what mentoring is, but tell us a bit about what coaching is.
So coaching is what happens in the mind of the coachee more than anything more formally defined. It's the process of getting someone who has the skills and knowledge to challenge their own views of what is really possible, to I suppose, to challenge the assumptions that they've been operating under, and to look behind some closed doors and lift up some flat stones in their own mind. It assumes the individual has the answers to the questions they ask of themselves. They just may not be able to get at those answers, as they are covered up by layers of life experience, beliefs, conflicting understandings, and anything else that may come up. So one definition here is a coach is someone who provides guidance to a client on their goals and helps them realise their full potential. And this is why it fits within the Realising Brilliance banner. As Nancy Klein, a leading coaching expert, says, the brilliant coach is the one who brings out the brilliance in others. So coaching is not about a particular style or magic words or incantations. It's not about formality or a set piece sit-down session. And it's not necessarily about formal training, although I will come back to that. Being a coach is about supporting a coachee get from A to B, more quickly and more effectively than they might do on their own. Some people might never get to be without the coach at all. But as a rule, it's about helping people get to where they have the potential to get rather than completely change direction. And so there are many definitions of coaching. I mean, how would you define coaching? Asking our audience, maybe post your comments in the chat. We'd love to hear what your definition is. But as John Whitmore says, it's about unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance. It's about helping people learn rather than teaching them. But narrowing the question to coaching in the workplace, it's an ongoing process designed to help coachees gain greater competence and overcome barriers to performing at their very best. And it provides people with the opportunity to better assess their strengths as well as their developmental areas. And the role of a manager as coach is to raise awareness of their team member and encourage them to take responsibility for their own actions. On-the-job coaching, peer-to-peer, team and group coaching are also all great ways to make everyday coaching the norm by enabling people to share their challenges, focus on particular themes, and create coaching environments where people can learn and mutually support themselves. But manager as coach is not a complete solution. Working with an accredited coach who provides coaching as their full-time job must and is often an option used for executive and senior leaders where aspects of their performance need particular attention, building influencing skills, confidence, presence and impact, and so forth.
So Caroline, obviously sort of a lot of overlap and a lot of things that are sort of similar with coaching and mentoring and a lot of things that are different as well, which we'll cover off. But when we look at them together, what are they both? How would you describe that?
Well, in this diagram, this is Miles Downey from anyone. I've got some learners from ILM on the call today. So Miles Downey's Coaching Spectrums is his work. Coaching and mentoring are philosophically very similar. At the core of each practice is the relationship between two or more people. We think about team and group coaching as well. There may be many more. And both coaching and mentoring, as we state here, are about helping people to get where they want to go by leveraging the experience of the coach or mentor. They can be seen to evolve from directive, more mentoring, to non-directive coaching. Mentors can utilize coaching tools and methods for the effective development of their mentees. And the very best mentors are often also great coaches, and they have also developed a coaching approach. Both approaches require the coach and mentor to build trust, be objective and non-judgmental, and importantly maintain confidentiality unless, of course, the coachee or mentee is at risk. Clear professional boundaries do need to be maintained so the relationship between mentor and mentee, coach and coachee does not develop unhealthy dependencies, and both offer a more practical, cheaper, more effective alternative to more formal performance or conduct management procedures in the workplace. Even though I'm a mediator, obviously I say this, it's true, or dismissing existing talent to find the missing 10%. Also quick and easy, usually, to arrange, confidential, covered by professional codes of conduct.
Fantastic.
So Ed, I think now I'm handing over to you on how they're different, please.
Yeah, absolutely, and really great to hear you say that point about actually some of the most effective mentors are also coaches. We're certainly seeing that is the case in our programs. So obviously lots of things that are overlapping, but there are some key differences with mentoring and coaching that it's important to highlight. So the first one is that often mentoring is longer term. We see some mentoring programs lasting for 6-12 months, but actually we see some programs and some mentoring relationships lasting for years and years. You only have to sort of Google and research famous mentoring relationships to find out that actually there are some mentoring individuals who've been in mentoring relationships for sort of decades and are still going to that mentor. So it's often longer term is probably the first key difference. With mentoring, there are no qualifications required. Maybe that says a lot about me as to why I went to mentoring rather than coaching. But actually this idea that it is flexible, that you don't need qualifications to share that knowledge and experience is really something that is one of the key, I suppose, differences with mentoring. The next one, as Caroline spoke about on the previous graphic or illustration is that mentoring is more directive, and the way we would describe that, and the way I've heard that described in the past, and Caroline, I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but actually with mentoring, it's more the mentor doing the talking, and the mentee sort of listening. So it's that direction, it's that mentor sharing that experience and directing the mentee accordingly. Typically, mentoring is also less structured. So whilst we always recommend having an agenda or meeting notes in place before your mentoring meeting to make the most of mentoring, there's typically less structure around it comparatively than with coaching. Actually, it's very much about what the mentee is looking to get out of it, and they can put together essentially their own structure as to what they want from it. And then finally, one of the other key differences with mentoring is that it's very much development driven. So it's about what the mentee wants to do in terms of developing and growing their career, and the advice that they're looking for from the mentor to progress effectively. So Caroline, would you like to talk through some of the key differences then for coaching?
Absolutely. So as regards coaching, typically seen more as a short-term engagement. In this engagement, a coach works with a client on specific goals, and when those goals have been achieved, the relationship is reevaluated, may end, may though be a one-off coaching conversation, maybe an everyday coaching conversation between peers, between a line manager and their member of staff. It may though be over a defined period of time. So we think about executive coaches coming in externally, it could be over contracting over a particular 3 or 6 month period, can be longer term, on occasion can be extended. It is always though important to recontract on goals, so there's alignment. I think the other point to make then is around training in coaching skills, maybe qualifications. Generally, people who receive special training to guide others in any field towards achieving their goals. So when we're helping others in this way, then it can be really helpful for individuals to understand a couple of good coaching frameworks they can use, such as the GROW model around what's your goal, what you're looking to achieve, what's the current situation, what's happening right now, options around what options might there be, what have you considered, what, you know, and then what are you going to do, what's your next step, your way forward. So that would be something to help people be able to find their own solution, to be able to have some tools that can be, you know, widely learned within an organization. And then non-directive, we've talked about that already. Coaches want to be catalysts for change and not supplying the ideas. So we operate more at that end of the spectrum. Typically structured, line manager, sponsor involvement here as well. So meetings can be scheduled on a regular basis with an agenda focused on specific immediate goals. Come back to the contracting and the midpoint review around that as well. So are we on track? Do we need to reevaluate? You know, what next in terms of where this conversation needs to go to get to your desired outcomes? And the line manager sponsor involvement here is key, that 3 or 4 way, often contracting around coaching objectives with roles and responsibilities being clearly defined. So there is understood between everyone, what's the commitment here? As me as sponsor for a program, what's my role? And as coachee, how do I factor in the time required to make my goals a reality? And then performance driven rather than development driven. Really, this is about the purpose of coaching is to improve the individual's performance on the job. And it revolves around specific developmental areas, issues, very much task focused on concrete issues that require a context, you know, as well. So some key differences there, Ed, I think.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And so now if we can talk about some of the skills involved and required for both coaching and mentoring. And Caroline, if you'd like to go first and talk about some of those key skills that you're seeing coaches possessing.
Yeah, I just noticed in the chat about, someone was mentioned chat about equals, and absolutely, I think the first thing is about this partnership of equals. It's really important, where the aim here with coach-coachee is to achieve speedy, increased and sustainable effectiveness through focused learning in every aspect. Really looking at that. How do we do that around focusing on the quality of the attention, our ability to really listen deeply? How do we keep agreement with our coachees? How do we recontract when it's appropriate to do so, manage boundaries, and give and receive appreciation and ask great questions? Those things coming together as an equal partnership is one of the, I think, foundational and most important aspects of how we work well with our coachees. Maximising resources and inspiring. This is the ability to make things, happen. It's the extraordinary quality that solves problems and helps the individual come to a new understanding of what is really possible. And it's the skill and talent to influence and guide others to make real breakthroughs and create lasting change. So it's really about maximising the resources. So coaches will have people who've been trained, will have tools at their disposal. It's really how to maximise those and tailor them, because one size does not fit all, and it may not be that any tool is necessary, but just the quality of your attention when you're listening to somebody and you're really holding yourself with curiosity as well. So recognising strengths and challenge to propel forward, focusing on improving existing skills even further will give coaches a boost, combined with consolidation to constructively challenge to push people to the next level. And then, of course, coaching, tackling problems head on and not working with a coach themselves who dwells on them. It's really important to help and focus on improving existing skills even further, because that gives coaches that boost. And coaches who are honest with themselves and about where they stand, have a firm grasp on reality. So they've got the proper skills and knowledge to assess the situation and find the best path forward. Supervision for coaches to help them have a safe space as well, so they can reflect and resource themselves to always, be what they need to be when they're present with their clients. And of course, raising awareness and self-responsibility. Awareness raises input, learning, interest, and recall. And responsibility is, I suppose, generated by offering choice, which leads to self-esteem and confidence and self-motivation, two vital ingredients, really, of performance. And then it's how we make it real. It's much more than having feel-good conversation. We need to translate the ideas into real life, say by formalising them as part of a 3 or 4-way contracting process, where that's applicable, because obviously sometimes it's just a conversation between two people, and we're talking about making coaching real and every day as well. But where appropriate, also looking at the individual's personal objectives, maybe a personal development plan, maybe setting a future date to revisit this as well, to review and track progress and make it living, breathing document, and striking the right balance always between interpersonal and practical application of coaching techniques is key. I'll pause there on that one, Ed, if I may.
So I'll go through some of the mentoring skills required now as well. So I think the first one, it may sound rather obvious, but a keen interest in helping others is vitally important with mentoring. We've seen some mentoring programs in the past that have been compulsory, and potentially individuals have been sort of forced into mentoring. In fact, I've heard stories in certain mentoring training courses where a mentor has been told they have to be a mentor, and actually they don't really have that much of an interest in doing so. So they've gone to the mentee and they said, right, I've been told I've got to be your mentor, so let's go to the pub for half an hour and have a conversation about what you want to do. That's not great for mentoring. So I think the first one is having a keen interest in helping other people is vitally important as a skill required for successful mentoring. The second one is that first-hand experience, knowledge, and insights. So actually giving concrete advice built on your own insights that you've learnt throughout your career. Really important as a skill required. To be an effective mentor, you have to sort of understand what the mentee has gone through or is going through and the challenges they're facing. You don't necessarily have to have been successful in that first-hand experience in the past. I've heard about people who've maybe made mistakes in the past and are helping their mentee to avoid making that same mistake again. And they haven't only learnt from the failure themselves, but they're helping others to avoid that failure as well. And some of the most successful mentors, particularly in certain industries where there's sort of high risk, such as entrepreneurship, are actually people who've maybe made mistakes and learnt from them and can pass those on. So that first-hand experience is really important. The next one, relationship building and interpersonal skills. So going off the back of what Caroline said, interpersonal skills, really, really important. They're not necessarily vital at the beginning of a mentoring relationship, or if it's your first time in mentoring, you'll organically learn how to improve your interpersonal skills over time. And the more mentoring relationships you enter into, the better you will become at relationship building and interpersonal skills. But going back to the earlier point that Caroline made about coaches being some of the most effective mentors, that's certainly the case with relationship building. Dedicated long-term time commitment is a really important factor when it comes to successful mentoring. Mentoring is a commitment, and as we've covered off, it's usually a longer-term commitment. So actually making sure you're dedicated to your time as a mentor and to your mentee, and making sure you're making the time for them is really important and certainly required. And then also motivating, encouraging and inspiring. Hopefully if you've got a keen interest in helping others, then you will want to also inspire and motivate them and be encouraging. Certainly if you've had that first-hand experience already, you're sort of halfway there in terms of inspiring, but really important for mentors to be motivating and inspiring, and that goes to asking the right questions in a positive manner, and really reflecting on that. So those are some of the key skills required, and the final one is of course helping to identify the mentee's goals. So sometimes actually we see mentors and mentees in relationships where the mentee has a really clear understanding of what they want to achieve. In other mentoring relationships, actually, that may not always be the case. So helping the mentee to identify their goals and helping them to work out what they don't necessarily know and what they should know is also a required skill. What would be fantastic now to do is just cover off some of the key benefits, and obviously there's a bit of an overlap in these key benefits to mentoring and coaching. But Caroline, what are some of the key benefits from a coaching perspective?
So that coaching can be conducted immediately on any topic, can be literally as short as a 5-minute conversation over Zoom or by the coffee machine when we get back to work. As short as that, when you have the opportunity to really listen to an issue, a challenge that someone has, and all that might be even required is opening a door through your presence and the attention in order to enable someone to have that light bulb moment. And group coaching has been successfully used to accelerate the progression of people, such as certain groups in organizations that we work with, and the impact of that. For example, when we're working with female leadership, has been that people have been promoted, retention rates for those particular group have increased, and people have performed much more effectively in their roles and widened their networks. So I'd say one of the key benefits of coaching is that it is a sustained intervention. The coachee and the coach connect on a regular basis, and the coachee's progress can be closely monitored. So in short, really, however coaching is being used in all its different formats within organizations, it does foster behavior and cultural change. Ed.
Brilliant, fantastic. So a couple of benefits, I suppose, on the mentoring side now. The first one, as we've kind of covered off, minimal training required to mentor. Of course, you can go on training courses to be a mentor, but actually it's not required to get started with mentoring. There are lots of mentoring guidelines out there that you can read, and that'll take some 10 or 15 minutes to read, and then you can kind of get started, and you're going to learn a lot about being an effective mentor as you engage with the mentoring experience and as you enter into new and multiple mentoring relationships. The second key benefit is that first-hand experience. So as a mentor, you're going to have that experience, and that obviously benefits the mentee hugely, knowing that the mentor has been in those situations, knowing that the mentor has already been through what the mentee might be struggling with, or the challenges they may be facing, and that first-hand experience can be a real benefit to the mentee in knowing how to go about what they want to achieve in terms of their goals and their objectives for that mentoring relationship. And then, as mentioned, there are sort of lots of benefits to both, and there's a huge overlap here. So actually, we've put most of them into the both section. I think the first one is that both are really effective learning techniques. They're not by any means one or the other. We see a lot of people who are both mentors and coaches. We see a lot of people who are mentored and coached. So both really effective learning techniques. The second part that we've covered is that they can both be formal and informal. They both have real benefits in terms of that formal, maybe 6-12-month mentoring or coaching program, but also that informal. So going back to what Caroline said, I think we're all looking forward to being able to interact in office environments by the water cooler or in the office environment. Actually, that informal mentoring and coaching is a real benefit. The third one that we've certainly seen with mentoring programs that we're running is increased employee engagement. So looking at engagement surveys with mentoring programs, we've definitely seen that those in mentoring programs have higher employee engagement. And Caroline, I'm sure you've probably seen the same with coaching.
Absolutely. And it really is that, I guess, really people feel motivated. There are typically higher levels of empathy. Employees feel valued and heard, and importantly, have increasingly sense that they matter. And in these days when we're talking about, creating environments where people really feel they belong, I think this is a key tool that we will have at our disposal for that. Both are easy to implement in any organisation, and we are seeing heightened activity. Certainly, it can be powerful to have identified internal stakeholder champions, to be those all-important ambassadors for the service, and increased confidence and interpersonal skills. I guess here it's really inspiring to see people, isn't it, for all of us? It's inspiring to see all of us thriving at work. And even as a mediator, when myself and others who work in workplace mediation have witnessed the power of having a coaching toolkit as a mediator as well, when you're working with people where their relationships have broken down. And it's incredible to see how fast people can adapt and take on new behaviours when faced with seeing the impact of their behaviour on their actions on others. So that is something that I've seen time and again. And lastly, improved individual and collective performance, with people taking on aspects of their career and their performance in a very focused way, whether individually or as part of the structured group or team approach. So those are things, Ed, I think that I'd add. And I know we both agree on all of these. We've been discussing them. So yeah, very pleased to share those. I think, we have another slide, but we're parking that for now. We have just top tips to get started. But we thought we'd hand back to Catherine for the poll and Q&A for now, and we'll see how we go for time.
Caroline and Ed, thank you so much for incredibly informative talk. So our poll, everybody, is: do you currently run mentoring or coaching programs in your organisation? We'd love to hear from you. Just you'll see a pop-up window in a moment, and you can vote. Do you currently run mentoring or coaching programs in your organization? Okay, so 35 or so percent running both, mentoring only at 16%, coaching only at 12%, and gosh, quite a large slice, approaching 40%, are running neither coaching or mentoring programs. Very, very interesting. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that, that feedback. Caroline and Ed, are you both ready for questions, or do you want to do your wrap-up slide?
I think we'll take questions now, Ed, won't we? And then we'll do the wrap-up slide. Yeah.
Yeah, I think questions sound good, and we may well cover off some of the wrap-up slide in the questions as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. We have some incredible questions. People have been incredibly generous and busy on chat. So I'm just going to grab some of these questions and ask them to you. First question from Gwyn Thomas. Will the slides be available following this event?
Yes, absolutely. Gwyn's head of our ILM centre, so we've got some learners on here. And I've had one call me this morning actually to say, please, can we have a recording? So yes, the answer is yes to that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Caroline. A great question from Meryl April. In organisations where senior people are being allocated, say, 2 or 3 mentees, and they're meeting with them regularly and they're assisting them in achieving their appraisal goals, is it best to move the mentors around on, for example, an annual basis? Ed, possibly that question to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I would say is actually ask the mentor and mentee what they want to a certain extent. If the mentor and the mentee feel like, and maybe ask them separately rather than in the same room to give them the opportunity to say what they really think. But actually, if it's working well, if the mentor and the mentee are getting a lot out of it, they feel like the mentor feels like they're helping the mentee, and the mentee feels like there's a lot of benefit there still, then there's no reason why you wouldn't want to extend that and keep that running. What we do often see, though, is that actually over time, mentoring relationships both individuals will at some point feel that they've got the most out of it and what they can out of it. And in those cases, of course, it's okay to then, end a mentoring relationship and move on to the next one. But I think the most important thing I would say is ask the mentor and the mentee if they're happy with that. And there's no reason why you can have multiple mentoring relationships. So maybe there's one that's working really well, but you want to have another mentor that's helping you with a different focus in your career. We're seeing some mentoring programs now focused on education around diversity and inclusion. So you might have a mentor that's educating and empowering you there, and you might then have a separate mentor who's been your mentor for 2 or 3 or 4 years potentially, and that's working really well as a longer term one. So I would say ask the employees what's working for them.
Wonderful, Ed, thank you. Question for both of you. This is from Colin Spiller. Thinking about the definitions of mentoring and coaching, where does problem solving come into mentoring, and where does problem solving come into coaching?
Caroline, would you like to go first on that one?
Yeah, well, thank you. It's around creating a space for someone to really think aloud or internally, because you can have silence as part of the contracting and just holding the space for someone to ask a question around a challenge they've got, to listen to the challenge they've got, and then to be able to ask them, where are they in relation to that problem? What progress have they made? For example, what progress have you made? And what's happening now? What's the current situation? And what have you done so far? Okay. And what options do you have at your disposal? And what haven't you yet considered? And in creating combining good questioning with quality of attention, it's honestly incredible that people can go where they hadn't even thought, maybe privately. Just having someone who is really focused on them, really deeply curious and digging deep about where they are in relation to that problem can ignite all sorts of possibilities. And that's, I would say, that coaching provides, being able to tap into what obstacles are in the way, or what ideas do you have about how you might remove them? What, if anything, was possible? And things do emerge. Ed?
Yeah, great points on the coaching front. I think with mentoring, it's probably more less about reflection and more around direction. So actually it goes back to that experience, and if there's problem solving, the mentor is going to be best placed to respond to that if they've maybe faced similar problems in the past themselves. And so it's not going to be so much about asking the individual to try and figure it out and reflect on it, but actually give them a bit of direction and signpost them in the right place. Not necessarily giving them all the answers. I don't think that necessarily helps anyone, but being a bit more directive about it and a bit less reflective when it comes to problem solving and mentoring relationships is probably the key that I would see with problem solving and mentoring.
And can I just add really there, it's also, everything can also go into a question, really. And even the what if, what if actually A, or what if B, so it still enables, this is why great mentors and great coaches as well, them to just be able to tap into that empowerment and around, actually, this is what I'm going to do. I'm feeling I've made that decision rather than I've been told. So this is what I think Ed and I are exploring, isn't it, around the development of mentors as coaches as well can be very powerful.
Thank you, Caroline. Ed, I'm putting you back in the hot seat, and from our very own Helen May, how is the effectiveness of mentoring programs measured?
It's a really, really good question. I think it depends what the objectives are to your mentoring programs in the first place. So with some mentoring programs, we see, I spoke about it slightly earlier, so I'll highlight this one again. For example, improved education around certain inclusion groups, for example. Other programs, an organisation might say, okay, we want our mentoring program to improve employee engagement or employee retention, or actually cross channels of communication between different departments. So actually encouraging mentors to have mentees in different departments and vice versa. I think the first thing you need to do is look at what those objectives are. And then to measure the effectiveness of that, you can do so either with surveys and feedback forms, and you can do those kind of midway through, or you could do one at the start of the mentoring program. So actually, asking questions about employee engagement at the beginning of your mentors and mentees, and then looking at it at the end, if employee engagement was the objective, can then help you to measure them. One thing though, there's always a challenge with measuring the effectiveness of mentoring is that actually every single mentor and mentee are probably going to have their own objectives and goals within the mentoring relationships. And I think so to that end, quantitative feedback and quantitative analysis of mentoring success is good to a certain extent, but you should also be asking those qualitative questions. And it may be that actually every mentor and mentee feels that it's really benefited them, but they may have seen different benefits. But yeah, it starts with the objectives, and then you can ask the right questions in sort of feedback forms and engagement off the back of that.
Great, thank you, Ed. It's always a tricky one, those measurement questions. Caroline, to you from Sangeeta Chopra, a really, really interesting question around this whole remedial or developmental on coaching. Which is it? Is it both?
Well, it's typically developmental. Well, it's about aspects of performance that we need to improve. So it is more the developmental side. Remedial, a lot of organizations have tried to move away from that remedial piece and completely support that. But when we look at coaching in all its guises, there are absolutely cases I can think of where where coaching maybe has come back from mediation, for example. So it might be that you've got someone, top performer, fund manager, really second virtue at final written warning, goes into a mediation, who's actually been turned around, and it's a very high performance this organization, asset management company, where they could have taken a different route and they could have just dismissed him. Actually, he is someone now who is a real shining example within that firm, has developed a real coaching style and has been to some events that we run as well. So people will look at, how do I want coaching to be perceived within our organization? And if you have a stigma around it's used remedial, then people who are your top talent, people you want to develop, you want to kind of stretch, they're just not going to be comfortable engaging. So it is really important, what kind of culture are we creating? How is coaching, I suppose, viewed within our organization? It doesn't stop those odd occasions actually where people may well benefit from some form of focus coaching, but then remember, coaching is very widely viewed. So it could be, I'm a manager, I've got to perform someone in my team. Now, how do I want to do that? You know, again, I can use a coaching style. So what's getting in the way of achieving this particular objective? You know, what are you assuming that's stopping you actually just tapping into some aspect of themselves that maybe is blocking them be successful? And that's a powerful toolkit for all of our people to have within every company. And certainly, you know, I would say that creating those spaces for people to really contract and understand how to be managed or manage can be very empowering. And then perhaps minimize those remedial situations, because perhaps we've done much more effective work at developing our people, developing our managers, developing our leaders around a coaching mentality that pushes away completely the situations where the word remedial is even top of the agenda.
Wonderful. Thank you, Caroline. I'm just conscious we've got about 20 minutes left. So if we can pick up the pace a little bit, because we have got quite a few questions still to go through. This is a really lovely one from Sian Parker Hornsey. We found it can be really useful to have a hybrid approach where certain elements of perhaps being coached and some others for mentoring. How can the two techniques, coaching and mentoring, be integrated for clients?
And it all comes back to contracting. I'd be really clear about contracting. And often in supervision, so I've supervised for Henley Business School for a number of years, we run supervision as well. When things break down and when things go a little bit sour, or a coach might struggle or doesn't feel necessarily they're, you know, at the top of their game, it's because some level of contracting has not effectively taken place, or recontracting hasn't happened. So it's really been clear about the purpose, clear around the how I'm going to show up and what I'm going to receive. And it doesn't mean you can only be one or the other, but it does mean that contracting is an important part of that to make that hybrid work effectively.
Yeah, I'm going to jump ahead just to get some new people's questions in. So this is a great question from Keelan Taylor. Ed, could you tell us a bit more about reverse mentoring and how it works practically?
Yeah, absolutely. Reverse mentoring is an interesting one because actually it's got a lot of the same qualities that traditional mentoring does. So reverse mentoring is essentially when an individual who you typically consider to be the mentee, and by that I mean potentially or probably younger, less experienced, or more junior in a business, has more experience in a certain area. So one of the examples of mentoring, reverse mentoring, is someone who has a real understanding and insights into technology and trends in the workplace. So they may just have come out of university or school, they may be an apprentice or a graduate, but they could actually be a really effective mentor to someone who's a senior leader in the business, who's maybe got 30, 40 years experience under their belt, but needs, you know, to be mentored on, you know, how to use technology effectively. Another example of that is diversity and inclusion programs. So actually educating senior leaders. The mentor could be someone from the LGBTQ plus network, for example, in a business, and educating a senior leader on the certain challenges that they may be facing that the senior leader just is unaware of. So that's the idea of reverse mentoring. It's someone who has more experience in a certain area and is sharing that. And then the way to get started with that is just to approach senior leaders, ask them if they are keen to or willing to be mentored and learn new things, and if so, where they want to learn new things, and then approach the individuals who you'd want to be mentors in this. So reverse mentors, and by that it might be going to the inclusion groups and asking who would like to be a reverse mentor, for example.
Ed, we'll keep you in the spotlight here because we have another question from Agnieszka. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. We've run a very basic mentoring program in our London office, but we're looking to expand to other locations across EMEA. Any top tips?
Top tip, I think the main one, the first one is give the mentors and the mentees a bit of a choice. Give them control over who they would like to be mentored or mentor, who they'd like to be mentored by or mentor. If you're giving them a bit of a choice, you're going to see higher engagement with mentoring, because actually they'll feel like they've engaged at the front, and they've opted into it, and they've proactively said, actually, I want you to be my mentor. You're going to see higher commitment levels. And then really it's just putting the right infrastructure in place. So, whether that is a technology like PushFar, or whether that's still running mentoring programs through an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of things, either of them works. We're all used to using Zoom and Teams now, but just setting those expectations up front. And actually we're seeing on our platform now more than 40%, I think 44% of our mentoring relationships are international. So you don't need to be in the same country as your mentor or mentee anymore. And that's got lots of benefits that go with that.
Wonderful, Ed, thank you. Great question, John Burgess. Caroline, for you, this one. One of the greatest benefits of mediation is the ability to apply mediation principles outside of the dispute resolution arena. Is there, or are there, mirror situations regarding coaching and also mentoring? We start with coaching, perhaps, on that one.
So I'm not clear on the question. So yes, I mean, my answer is, so we use mediation. I mean, obviously we're not focused on mediation today, but mediation techniques, of course, can be used every day. They're fantastic skill sets. Some of them are mirrored by some coaching skill sets around active listening, around deep curiosity, around being heard, around not interrupting, giving people a space to speak, and with no fear that someone's going to step in and correct them. And we contract very carefully around that at mediation. Understand that impact doesn't equal intention, far removed from that. But these are things that go right out into every day. So for workplace mediators who, again, maybe have a coaching approach, because some of these things we're talking about are what great leaders should have in their toolkit every day. Everyone, can benefit from some of these skills that cross a number of different, whether it's mentoring, whether it's mediation, whether it's HRBP's role, whether it's a consultant, whether it's a counsellor. Everyone has similar tools that they draw on, and tailor it to the individual. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it gives some indication.
I think these are skills for life, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And
coaching, mentoring, skills for life.
Yeah, and whether a mediator, you're a coach, or a mentor, you're a line manager, you're a leader, you're a CEO, whoever you are, really holding a space and really getting good at asking great questions and listening and to what's being said, rather than the mind wandering, and holding your presence. These things matter, whoever we are. They matter as a mom. The most powerful thing for me, when I heard Nancy Klein speak many years ago, my kids were young, and I was at Henley, and I heard her for the first time talk about the thinking environment and the 10 principles of thinking environment. It transformed my relationship, because I realized that I was distracted. I was on my computer, I was listening to my kids, I was doing something else, or trying to cook, and actually just holding a space for my kids and just saying, hey, how was your day? What was one great thing that you did today? No, let's focus on the positives. Tell me other stuff later. Plenty of that. But it transformed my relationship with my kids. And that was my, I suppose, light bulb moment. Wow, if we could do this in every walk of life, wouldn't that be amazing?
Caroline, thank you so much. I cannot disagree with everything you've said. In fact, my children now say to me, Mum, stop coaching me.
I had that too.
So Ed, we've got time probably for maybe maybe 3 more questions. So this one is from Bethina Sassaron to Ed. In coaching, we have models such as the GROW model. Do such models exist in mentoring too?
Not that I've come across. Is the short answer there. There may be some, but not that I've come across from any of the programs that we've run for sort of hundreds of clients. We know, or I know, that there are some clients that will use models like the GROW model and apply them to a certain extent with mentoring, but not really is the short answer there.
But the models, Ed, isn't it? The models of the GROW model or the Oscar model. Oscar is another great model, by the way. We teach that on our ILM programs. Outcome, situation, what's happening right now, choices and consequences, you know, action and review. These are all models that can be, again, what's most appropriate? What do you want to develop your people in? And they don't have to be used linearly. You can just take choices and so what have you thought of? What might the consequence of doing X be? What are the pros and cons of that? That's just one part of a framework. All you might need in that 5-minute conversation with somebody is just one question around what have you thought about? You know, something like that. And I think, you know, mentor-mentee training, because I've seen that's come up. Certainly, Ed, that's something that we advocate, isn't it? Is actually helping people tap into what it means to be a great mentor, what it means to be, you know, a mentee, because of course they've got, you know, a contract as well about commitments and you know, how are they when they show up as well, because that those things are very important. So the training will cover all those things as well. I know it's 28 minutes past, and I know we didn't get our final slide, Ed, which was how we set up, or steps of setting up. So we run out of time. I think it's been very enjoyable from my perspective today. The engagement has been fantastic, and with the subject, and I know speak for both of us, Ed, but it's been very enjoyable working with you, I have to say. And Catherine, thank you. And Helen, I know, who's in the background, she helped with the slides and helped order my thoughts. So Helen, a big call out to you. It's deeply appreciated, your support as ever.
Yeah, fantastic. Just to echo that, it's been really great to have the opportunity to connect with so many people. I've certainly learned a lot from all the comments and particularly the questions at the end, where obviously I've gone through the slides before with Caroline and learned a lot then, but I've learned a lot from these questions as well, which is brilliant. So thank you to everyone for taking part, and thank you, Catherine, for being such a great host and managing everything.
My absolute pleasure. I have lots of people behind the scenes sending me the right prompts. So thank you to the team behind the scenes, to Jessie, to Dan, to Evan. Thank you all so much, and wishing you a very wonderful rest of your week. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The recording will be available. It won't it? So that will be, we have recorded it, so it will be available. Thank you, everyone.